Now, one of the things that comes up with storage all the time is backwards compatibility. Obviously, LTO3 went to 2 and 1. In LTO5 or 4, I believe you cannot use LTO1 tapes anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct. And this is actually all set by the LTO consortium. LTO5 can read LTO4 and 3 and can write LTO4. So it's read and write back 1 generation and read back 2 generations.
And LTO4 goes back to 2, 3, and 4?
That's correct.
But will not read 5, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
And so what do you see as the lifespan? I mean, one of the issues people have with archiving is they're like, how long is this thing going to last? Am I going to be able to read it in 5 years? And obviously, I have a bunch of jazz discs and SideQuest discs at home.
Right.
They're great discuses. I put my drinks on them. But is that going to happen with these cartridges?
We don't think that's going to happen with LTO because there are literally millions of these in use at banks, insurance companies, medical records. This is an IT industry standard, and it's also a consortium. So LTO is manufactured by Hewlett-Packard, which is the brand of drive we use inside our box, as well as IBM and Quantum. So there are 3 manufacturers of the drive mechanism, and as far as tape goes, there's Fuji, Maxell, TDK, Sony. Everybody that makes tape makes LTO tape. So we believe that this is a very long-lived media going into the future. The media itself is IT industry qualified as having a 30-year archival life, and we feel that that is far longer than you will be able to read the file formats that you wrote to that tape.
Well, speaking of that then, so what if I am that person at the IRS who has records that are 50, 60 years old, and now they're all on LTO1. What do I do with that media? Do I have to now buy a new deck and transfer everything over? Is that the plan?
Well, yeah, and that is the case with pretty much any archival solution, that you need to keep that archive refreshed over time. Much content really doesn't need to be preserved for more than 5 or 10 years. It's no longer relevant, but those real valuable assets that have long-term value that you want to archive for 30, 50 years, you do need to migrate it into newer file formats and newer media as well, just in terms of efficiency.
Okay, one last question, because we're talking about tape, and everybody says tape is dead. Somehow now we're going away from tape, now we're coming back to tape. What's the deal? Explain to us once and for all what the difference is, for example, with an HD Cam SR tape or what is used here in an LTO tape.
Right, okay, well, HD Cam SR tape is really the pinnacle of the art in putting rust on plastic, and so is LTO tape. The formulations are slightly different, but the technology is really the same. And what's different about data tape from HD Cam SR is it's far more widely used, so the costs are much lower. An LTO4 cartridge goes for about 35 or 40 bucks now, and LTO5 is up at 120, but it's still, pennies per gigabyte of storage. So you've got the cost advantage of having that media being used very widely, so that keeps the cost down. You've also got the technological improvements that are being used on hard drives propagating into the tape drives. So the maximum likelihood type of reading that is going on inside of a disk drive is in fact also being leveraged in LTO tape, and that's how we get such incredible data rates and densities with a simple linear tape and no moving scanners. And that also makes it much more reliable than something like HD Cam SR.
Well, let's talk about reliability. I mean, what are the chances of dropouts, for example, on record, on storage? Do you need to make multiple LTOs?
Yeah. So the media may have dropouts, but if those dropouts are encountered, every write is read verified, so the drive itself knows that it wasn't able to get it onto tape. It'll scoot down to the next section of the tape and successfully write it, or if it is unable to, it'll generate an error and you'll have to find a different tape to write your content on. But everything's still protected because it's on the internal disk until you have verified that it's on the tape to your satisfaction. We also keep stuff on the disk if you want when you eject the tape, so you can put in a fresh tape and make a second copy so you can have duplicates for off-site and on-site storage.
Okay, because I mean a lot of times I noticed with magnetic tape is you'll record, the record is fine, you put it on your shelf for about 6-8 months and all of a sudden you have tape hits on it. The tape hits weren't there when you recorded and somehow they're there when you start playing back. Is that an issue with LTO?
Not that I've seen, and not that most banks and insurance companies see. If your bank account didn't restore every single bit correctly, you certainly notice, and the bank would not be using that as their archival media. The error rates that HP quotes for these drives are something like 10 to the minus 17th, which is an unbelievably small number. So no, the answer is that's not a problem with these tapes.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This has been really great. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the interview.